Hi, my name is Tycho Dwelis, and you're watching the School of Fiction channel. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, Tycho, it's a pleasure to have you. And this is my second interview of the night. So my adrenaline is really pumping now.
Nice,
So
yeah, that's
you're
great.
you're an indie author of the recent generation. I'm an indie author of the first generation. So I was in the what I call the indie author bubble starting around 2010. And now you're in the current generation, although you have quite a few works already available, which I'm looking forward to reviewing with you. So tell us just a little bit about how you got into that, and also about the how you work in different age levels.
Yeah, sure. Ironically, I actually also, to some extent, was a part of that first indie book bubble. I ended up actually publishing my very first work in 2011. And it was really
Me
bad. I
too.
was very young. It did not look good. It has since been reworked and now has seen the light of day as a completely different title. But I do remember that very beginning time, where I mean, with the internet and create space and everything being so new, and vanity presses were really trying to take advantage of literally every indie author on the internet, which was not
And they still
great.
are.
And they still are, yeah. So not much has changed there. But yeah, I was very inspired by a friend's dad who self-published his own book, and it was the first time I realized that I, as an indie author, could potentially have the control to be able to do that without having to query or go through agents or do all of that. And that got me interested in eventually teaching other people how to do those things. And now I write books whenever I want and publish them as often as I want, which is a beautiful and great freedom being an indie author. But yeah, like you said, I've got about 10 titles, I think, out right now. And I publish about a book a year, give or take. And I also, yes, write for all audiences. And the youngest being middle grade. I don't really write children's book fiction, like picture books, but middle grade all the way through adult, which has been really fun. I started by writing middle grade, and now my most recent is an adult book, so I've kind of just slowly shifted the age group to the older audience as I've gone on, but I think I will eventually revisit middle grade fiction at some point.
Okay, so where shall we start?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think the way that those titles look are pretty much my like oldest to newest. There are some things that I do end up, or I will have to change eventually. But in terms of my oldest stuff, the Brady Von Altus books, which are my middle grade paranormal series, is the youngest audience. I write predominantly fantasy, though I'm querying a science fiction right now. So all of my stuff is fantasy flavored to some extent. Brady is a paranormal fantasy about a very normal kid with a very weird family. It's very inspired by Eastern European folklore and covers how Brady not only deals with regular day to day stuff that kids deal with, but also his very adult conflicts within his family and the family dynamics at play in his day to day life as well. Because I don't think we realize how much kids are impacted by things that go on in their family and how they also play into that family dynamic.
Now, since you have art ability, should I assume that you created the art for these covers?
Oh yes, yeah. I guess I should mention that as well. Yeah, I'm a trained illustrator, and I've gone to art school for visual development, which is concept art for video games and film, which is really fun. And I am the designer, the book designer, as well as the cover illustrator and interior illustrator for all of my work. Yep.
Very good. So then we have how many books are in this series?
It is a duology. The second one has not come out yet and is going to be coming out next year, which is very exciting. That's my young adult duology, which is great. It's a political dystopian. And then King of Dust is my most recent paperback release, which is an adult vampire fantasy inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. So it's definitely one for all of the tabletop loving nerds out there.
So
D&D is pretty close to my heart, so.
we didn't talk about that, but I am a D&D player from the 80s. I started with this, AD&D.
Oh, yes.
And
Yep.
so definitely this is the one that you sent to me, which I'm planning to read. And so I'm looking forward to the D&D element of it, definitely.
Yeah.
And then this, how big is this series so
So
far?
that's just a short story collection right now. I think eventually I will rework it and turn it into a book. That's a big question. It's a paranormal western, so that's kind of outside of my usual fare. But also on my website under the books tab as well, which is not listed on the front page yet, will or is a Mirror Gaze, which is another. It's a free to read fantasy novel that I released onto Wattpad, which was very fun. Adult fantasy following two sisters and very intense magical explosions. And then also I have Betrayer's Blade as well, which is an adult sword and sorcery fantasy too. So I like to just dabble in a lot of stuff and put out as much as I can at any point. And then what you've opened up here is Heaven's Equal, which is my webcomic adaptation of the Chinese 13th century. I think it's either 12th or 13th century classic Journey to the West. If you're familiar with that Chinese classic, it was an epic written, or I guess comprised by the author Wu Chang'an. And it's a lot of Chinese mythology and really cool Buddhism and Taoism, and I was really inspired by the work, and I couldn't believe that more Westerners didn't know about it, and so I started making a webcomic, and then Journey to the West actually in the last year or so has gotten very popular with the release of a couple of video games, including Black Myth Wukong, which I think alerted the Americas to Chinese mythology, which is very, very cool. So I've set mine in modern day Los Angeles. My goal with this comic is to hopefully give Chinese mythology to Westerners in a way that they're going to understand, but is not going to water down the myths, because I see a lot of adaptations do that, where they kind of breeze over a lot of content for the sake of dumbing it down for people who might not have the as much like history or understanding of what's going on. For something that's so popular in China, like they play Journey to the West around Christmas time every year in China, and then we here in the States, unless you're Chinese American, you just don't really get that content. So I love this story so much, and it's been really fun working on such a challenging product.
This is completed, or are you still putting it out?
It is still ongoing, and I don't plan on stopping this for probably like 10 years. It's a really big story. The Journey to the West story is massive. It's like 100 chapters, and I don't remember what the word count of the original work was by Wu Chang'an, but it's huge. There's so much content, and the original book reads kind of like a action serial almost, and it's like each chapter almost ends with like you're gonna have to come back next week and see how they deal with these demons next time, and it's very interesting looking at it from a historical context. But I put out a page every single week, and then every 5 chapters I comprise them into a physical print volume and then release the print volume. So we're gonna be really close to volume 2, which will probably come out next year. But as a one-man team working on this, it takes a really long time, so this is definitely like a labor of love project for sure.
That gave me flashbacks to two things. First of all, the old Batman series from before I was born. Where they showed it twice a night, and also the Indian for Hindu series Vikram and Beetal.
Oh yeah, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it
Yeah.
ends up where it never really ends. You just some come back next time to see how this develops from here. So
Yeah, yeah, it's very similar in that, and I'm trying to give it a more linear and overarching storytelling to it, so that way it will eventually have an end. But it's I want to try and cover as much of the original work as I can, which has been really fun.
and I'm also gonna be starting to read this pretty soon. Honestly, you have a Discord, and this is something that none of the other people I've interviewed since I started this channel have a Discord. So let's take note of that. It's a chance to kind of for fans to get together and talk. All right. I still can't
Yes.
open it without logging in, which I don't want to do now. And then you have an Etsy, so let's just see what's in there. This is what kind of work is this?
This is where I sell all of the physical copies of my books. So you can buy everything that I have on Amazon, which is all well and good, but they don't come signed, which is unfortunate. So anytime I do restocks on any of my books, those are available there. I also sell like specialized box sets, like the Brady Von Altus box set there, that is not available on Amazon. They don't come with the cool book box, things like that. Otherwise, merch related to my books that have characters of my books on them, I also blend loose leaf teas that are themed around the main characters of my books as well. And then I also sell artwork, my fine art that I do, things like that. So it's kind of a little collection of everything that I've just got going on behind the scenes.
Mhm. Very nice, very nice, and it is not at all uncommon for people to be good at multiple arts. I think there's a tendency for some to assume if you're a writer, you're a writer. If you're a painter, you're a painter. If you're a musician, you're a musician. I don't think that's true. I've always been a multi arts person. I was in a musical group. I'm a photographer. So, and you're really good at all those things. I'm only good at writing, but the it's I don't I guess I'm rambling here, but the idea of being a person who works in all the arts at the same time is very inspiring.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I can't stop creating. I just love anything that has to do with like storytelling, whether it's like storytelling through art or through writing. I'm like, I got to get my hands on it,
Yeah.
definitely.
Since you are writing, a lot of stuff that's for children and middle grades, how do you get your mind into the mindset of children, the way they think? Because even as a professional teacher, I don't think like them. I understand what they're thinking, but I don't think like them. As a writer, I can't write inside the middle grade reader's mind the way you can. How do you
I
do?
think for me, because the Brady books in particular were so inspired by a lot of the things that happened not only to me as a kid, but also to when I was younger, I was looking around at everybody else that was around me and observing what was happening to them. And so whether the experience happened directly to me or to somebody that I knew, it stuck with me, I think, pretty intensely all the way through adulthood. And so the Brady books, to some extent, for me, are a way to address all of those things that happened to me when I was a kid, but also it was a great way to recognize that I think kids think that they're alone when weird things happen to them, but in reality, a lot of people have experienced really similar things. And so that was really my goal with writing this series was giving something to the world that probably 10 or 11-year-old me would have wanted to read or would have needed to read at that time. And then I also have the benefit as well of intentionally reading a lot of middle grade books. So that would be like my number one piece of advice is if you're going to write for children, make an effort to just go to the public library, pick up the series that are popular, and read what is being written for those age demographics. Because then that can give you a good idea of what they can handle, what they can't handle, or what they're looking for. And it's just a matter of, I think, keeping stories simple, but not necessarily dumbed down. So the Brady books do talk a lot about some pretty severe topics like disability, mental illness, grief, lying and having consequences to actions like going to court for doing things that you shouldn't be doing. Not that Brady gets involved, but he has a family member that does have to own up for stuff that he's done in a non-severe or serious way is the way that I liked to present it personally. You know, you have a dead uncle who's a ghost who's going to court, which seems completely ridiculous because literally 24 hours later, he just walks out of jail and decides he doesn't want to be there anymore. So the situations are very comical, but when I think about kids who do have family members who might be going to court, or if you have to testify for or against your family member in court as an 11-year-old, what does that look like? You know, so thinking about those kinds of experiences, but then making sure that it's presented in a way that kids are not going to be overwhelmed by was really important for me when working on these books.
Yeah, I covered quite a few of those themes in my YA books also. Not
Yeah,
court, but the other ones before that. So,
yeah, yeah,
and you can't sugarcoat stuff also. I'm
yeah,
a
definitely.
fan of like, let it hit as hard as it hits because kids don't want to be talked down to.
Yes, and that's the number one most important thing. I think I get turned off the most as a reader when I pick up a middle grade book and I realize that the author, it becomes very apparent that they've never spent time around children ever. It's super awkward because it's almost like they're talking to like a Sesame Street Muppet rather than an actual person. And that I think definitely does a disservice to the kid because if they're smart enough to read the book, they're probably smart enough to understand what you're trying to tell them.
we agreed that you were going to give for our craft lessons interview the basics of self-publishing in 2025, and clearly you've done a great deal of it, and you know a lot of different resources for it, probably some that I'm not familiar with. So, if our target audience is people who want to get into self-publishing, maybe avoid the pitfalls and find the best routes, give them a little guide, the Tycho way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what makes this topic particularly difficult is that there's so much going on that it can be very overwhelming as a first-time author to do self-publishing. The number one thing that I always warn people about is that the main difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing is that when you self-publish, you literally are the publisher, which means that you're not only writing your manuscript, but you're also sourcing editors, finding designers for the covers of your books. You're going to be doing all of the marketing for your work. You have to set up all of the metadata, SEO, have a website, all of those things. And so, really having an understanding of all of the different mechanical parts that go into self publishing is very, very helpful before you get started, just so that you have a good, I think maybe like linear guide for all of the check boxes you need to check before you hit that launch button. So that way you don't do what I did when I was 17 years old and I just released a book and then didn't really have any pathway for it. And it was great for like a hobbyist writer at the time and for somebody who just wanted to actually hold a physical product in my hand. But if your intention is to actually be a professional author, having those things in place beforehand can be really, really important. And so I myself am a self-publishing consultant for a lot of indie author clients. And the first thing that I always recommend that they set up is some kind of publishing pipeline that includes those different phases. It's the drafting stage, editing, then publish, then marketing. And you can break it up into as many little categories as you want or as many different sections as you need. But having that publishing production pipeline will save you from missing things or missing deadlines or not really knowing what's going on. Um, but honestly, I think my biggest thing for 2025 is not falling prey to any kind of like FOMO or urgency scams or things that people are going to try and sell you on the internet, and actually connecting with real people who have self-published their books before. Because like we were mentioning earlier, the main vanity press issue first has not gone away, but that was big for me when I first started to publish. My very first book was you didn't know why these people were trying to charge you $8,000 to send you 5 billion copies of your book that were never going to leave your basement, but they were. Today, it looks a little bit different, where you'll have people reaching out to you telling you that if you send them money, they will make you an international bestseller overnight. Or if you send them money, they're going to make sure that your book sells X number of copies. Or if you send them X amount of money, then they are going to produce a book for you or even write a book for you. You also have AI services that are trying to get your attention and make you effectively potentially either sell your manuscript to them or produce AI slop, which is not great, those kinds of things. And so being very aware of what services you do actually need versus what is effectively just, yeah, FOMO garbage that's being thrown your direction, that is not helpful. And being able to differentiate between those two, I think, is the most important thing of 2025. Staying organized and not being tricked into accidentally spending money on scams. Those two things.
Yeah, and I'm talking to a lot of people about scammers. I just talked to in my previous interview about scammers too, and I'm learning about it because I took a break from being in this world for a couple of years, mainly because of unpleasant things that were happening, and I'm going back into it and trying to learn through these interviews and through my own study. And so I quickly discovered the scammers that say inbox me, DM me.
Yeah.
Not that I was talking to them, but I kept seeing so many of them. And then I'm learning about the people where they're using AI to rewrite stuff. And I said, well, why did the professional editor send me something that has these errors? Well, because it was an AI.
Mm-hmm.
The person that you're dealing with uh, probably barely knows English.
Yep.
It's like you should, and I have no problem with people who don't speak English, but just you shouldn't be selling services for English language writers, if that's who you are.
Right.
Yeah, the general tip then is if somebody says DM me or inbox me, don't.
Yeah,
Uh,
just block them.
yep.
Yep, just block them.
That's why I always do everything through email because scammers don't use email.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because I actually did get an email this last year, give or take, from a brand new publisher, and they said that they found me on TikTok and that they were looking for somebody to, they're looking to, I guess, acquire manuscripts for them opening up, which is fine. New publishers have to start somewhere. But the biggest red flag for me was that none of their staff, even though the guy that owned the publishing company was a real person and I was able to connect with him and ask him questions about the company. None of their staff had like website based emails. All of them were sending emails from their personal Gmail accounts. And so at the very minimum, it was unprofessional. But in the worst case scenario, it very well could have been a scam. And I obviously ended up having to, push that person out to see. And, even if you are running a legitimate company, you have to look professional. Otherwise, people are not going to have any faith that you're not going to do very weird things with our creative work or potentially scam authors.
And we're looking at a real person who will disappear as soon as you're trying to get the money that he said he was going to give you.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's not
When you
great.
sue them and they don't exist, and or they were incorporated in a different state than they told you they were, and who needs all
Exactly. Yep. So do your research, find people who are EFA or certified editors, find companies, publishing houses that have been established for a while, get agents through Query Tracker. Don't or send editor stuff to people who actually have a portfolio. Don't be afraid to ask for people for their website or portfolios or previous clients. And then if they send you all New York Times best-selling authors or random books from many different publishers, run away because they're probably lying.
I do wonder and why it is that so many of these people are trying to pick on authors as if they think that aspiring or indie authors have that much money that they can pilfer.
Right.
I
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's what I really try and tell people too. That's another good thing to make a note about self-publishing in 2025. You will have way more fun going into it if you recognize that you're probably not going to make $1 billion self-publishing. Keeping that at the forefront of your mind, but then also that means that you can and should be picky about the services that you do choose because our budgets are very limited as authors. And we do have the ability to kind of, say no and to put our foot down. And if somebody is doing something that we don't like as a service provider, as long as it's within the contract to do so, get rid of them. You don't need them, and make sure that you're doing things that are only going to be beneficial to you in the long run and are also not going to break your bank because that's the worst.
So I guess fundamentally, the number one thing to do is don't fall for scammers. So
Yeah, yes, yeah. Please don't do that. And like I always tell people, and like an open resource for this as well. If anyone ever has any questions about whether or not something is legitimate or a scam, I always tell people to either message me on Discord or just email me because I will gladly just look at something and tell somebody whether or not it's a good or a bad idea. So,
absolutely. Uh, this has been great, Tycho. I really appreciate it this time, and also I really appreciate your professionalism because literally everything that we need to know is running through your website, and which a lot of people have been well, I got to show this link and this link and this link. It's all through there. You really do have the professional aspect of it down. I'm looking forward so much to reading your work, which I'm just starting to engage with now. Oh, well, what's next for you for the rest of 2025?
oh, that's a good question. I just entered a couple of books into some awards, so I'm waiting to see if those turn out. But otherwise, just keeping on writing manuscripts, querying about a million agents and trying to figure out if I actually want to do traditional publishing or not, or if it just takes too long and I don't care, all of those things. But yeah, hopefully, I just became an EFA certified editor myself, so maybe doing some more certifications in that world. We will see how it goes.
What's EFA? I'm sorry.
EFA is the Editorial Freelancers Association. It is kind of, I don't want to say that they're like a union. They're not really, but they're an editors guild effectively. They are a great place to find actual real editors if you're looking for people who will not scam you and will also all relatively have industry standard rates, so you're not going to get accidentally overcharged. I would highly recommend them. And if you want to become an editor yourself, they offer a variety of really great courses, whether they're self-paced or asynchronous courses, to get certifications, and they are very cool.
Very good. So I'm going to invite you to come back whenever you have something you want to announce, or if you just want to hang out and talk about some writing topics. I think this has been a great experience. And
Yeah,
what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll chat a little bit more.
cool. Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Tycho. It was a pleasure.
The School of Fiction.